but still the two of us.
Mm.
But it's early. Let's see how many will attend eventually.
Yeah. I've muted all the attendees. Could you speak up to check if you're... No. Could you unmute?
Now you can hear me.
Yep. But
What?
I know I pressed like mute all in webinar, and
Indeed, you muted everyone.
but like, is it for speakers or is it for
For
the
everyone. It's
participants?
for everyone. For everyone. It's speakers and participants, I think, apart from yourself. Because you are the host, apart from yourself, everybody is muted.
Mm.
And actually, we should mute everyone. We don't want them to be able to discuss, but I think they are muted by default.
Mm.
Yeah, but we don't care.
Yeah, let's give 1 more minute before we commence. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. So these days, AI is definitely the talk of the town. And given its diverse applications, it's everywhere in our personal lives and business. In the context of business, pricing is one of the most important applications of artificial intelligence, given that pricing is the most important profit lever, and it has direct impact on bottom line for any business, right? However, we still wonder if AI-powered pricing works in real life or not. So how will we know? We need to test. We need to test it before the implementation or as part of the implementation, right? To boost our confidence in the pricing strategy. And this webinar is all about testing AI-powered pricing strategies. Using real-life business cases, we'll learn different testing techniques, and we will also uncover the kind of impact it can have on businesses, right? And sorry. During this webinar, we'll first cover the application of AI in pricing, followed by the challenges in measuring success. And then we'll cover overview of different testing methods by using different case studies, and then we'll jump into question and answer session. A couple of logistics. This webinar is recorded. It'll approximately take 40 minutes, and then another 10 to 20 minutes of Q&A session. We will share the recording to you after the webinar. A quick introduction about myself before I hand over to George. My name is Nihit Ningthaujam. I'm the founder of Pricing Strats. Pricing Strats helps businesses to develop pricing strategies and execute them effectively. And 70% of our clients are in a B2B SaaS sector, remaining 30% in diverse sectors such as automotive, pharmaceuticals, and consumer goods as well. Sometimes we work with private equity firms to help their portfolio operations to create value. So I'll now hand over to George.
Okay, thanks, Nihit, and hi, everyone. I'm George Boretos. I'm the founder of Future App, and I'm really excited to be here today together with Nihit to discuss about my favorite topic, which is AI combined with pricing. Because this is exactly what we do in Future App. We are using proven predictive AI models for price optimization and strategic forecasting. But the important thing is that we incorporate business and economic intelligence in our modeling in order to be able to adapt to varying macro and market determinants and parameters, like, for instance, different inflation, spending capacity, competitors' pricing, and things like that, in order to offer price or other predictive insights that help our customers boost their business performance, even expo. So having said all that, enough about us. Now let's deep dive into AI and how can we use that in pricing. Well, there are a couple of important pricing challenges where AI can be used, and I'm pretty sure that most of you have thought about it. First of all, it's price optimization. We all know that there is a sweet spot somewhere between low and high prices where we maximize our revenue performance, for instance, our profitability, or any other KPI that the customer or the company seeks to maximize. But this may vary, may be different per country, for instance, or per market. And also, even in the same market, in the same country, it may be different because competitors change their prices, or you have a bigger or smaller inflation, or an economic slowdown, and all these things that may affect our pricing and eventually our price optimization exercise. So that's one big key challenge. And the other one is identifying the pricing logic behind our pricing strategy. I don't know if you've seen the recent LinkedIn commercial from Jaguar. Actually, I was presented with this promo. I'm sure lots of other people have as well. And that was about Jaguar subscription. So they have a subscription model exactly as software as a service. Now we have car as a service, and they have all the similar characteristics. So you can pay per month. It's not a rental, by the way, and it's not one-off sales. It's something completely different and orchestrated centrally by Jaguar. And you can choose between different models, exactly like you can choose different bundles or packages in software as a service. You can choose different accessories, exactly as you are choosing different features in products like software and things like that. So they are facing all the same and similar challenges. For instance, should they charge by month or should they charge by kilometer, for instance, which may be more suitable for a car offering like that. So this type of challenges are what constitute the pricing logic. And this is something that we can do and we can help with AI. Now, the key question is, why do we need AI in order to solve all these problems and address all these challenges? Can we do it along with our business experience and intelligence? Obviously, you can do some things with your business experience and your domain expertise. You can directionally perhaps understand where you should head to. For instance, Jaguar understood that they should generate or create a new subscription model. But when you want to be specific about it, so you need an exact pricing, or you need to be specific about the models or the packages or the features that you are going to incorporate into your pricing logic, then you need something different. And let's be honest, our human brains cannot compute so many different dimensions. And now we have many dimensions to tackle at a country level, at a product level, at a market level, customer level. All these things together, it's impossible to solve alone. So you need predictive AI coupled with pricing expertise in order to be able to boost your business performance, whatever you are seeking to increase. It could be your profitability, your conversion rates, it could be your revenue, or anything else. All this can be done by applying the right AI model in your pricing. So that works great in theory, but does it work in practice? And this is, in its own right, this is another big challenge, how to measure success in AI-enabled pricing project. So there are a couple of aspects to consider here. For instance, what are the predictive insights that we are generating with our AI model? Is it just pricing? We generate different optimum prices per country, for instance. Or do we on top generate also some revenue forecast? For instance, what happens when we cut off our prices or increase our prices and things like that? And it's not only what we measure, but also how we measure it. Do we want to identify the exact price or the exact growth potential that we see after we discount our prices or something like that? Or do we want to just understand the magnitude of the change? Meaning that we want to understand if we should increase or decrease prices, if we should go for a premium price or value for money pricing or cheap pricing, or if we would expect a big impact on our market share or our unit sales or a small impact. So in these cases, we're not predicting for a specific value, but for a class. For instance, big or small revenue impact, big or small price. This is something that we do, and we need different accuracy measures to measure all these things. If we are forecasting for a specific value, for instance, a specific optimum price per country, in this case, what we need is a forecasting error. There are many errors. I'm just listing here a few to start with. There are more than 20 different forecasting measures. So for the forecasting error, usually what we do is we compare the actual value of whatever we are measuring and predicting, for instance, our optimum price, versus the predicted price. It could be just the difference between actuals and predicted values. It could be the absolute value of the difference. It could be a percentage error. It could be a number of things. But if we are forecasting for class, again, it's a binary thing. It could be small, big, things like that. So in this case, we need different measures. One is precision, how precise our forecast is. For instance, we decrease our prices and we want to understand what's the impact, big or small, above, let's say, a certain threshold in different countries. So let's say we predict that in 10 countries, we will have a big impact in our growth, for instance, over 10% or something like that. If eventually only 6 countries had such a big impact, then in this case, our precision was 6 out of 10 or 60%, which is okay, not great perhaps, but it is okay. But if overall the countries that had a big impact from this discount were, let's say, 100, and we just identified 6 out of the 100, then our recall is 6%. So you understand, we need these different measures because they complement each other in order to fully understand how accurate the model is from different angles. And it's not just that. Also, we need to understand the actual impact to our business. Of course, this depends on the accuracy of our predictions, but it's not just that. It's also the execution, and it's also the strategic decision-making that we do based partly or fully in this predictive insight. So having said all that, let's see a few of these testing methods or testing categories, I would say. First of all, we have testing methods that we can use before or after the launch of our pricing scheme, of our new pricing policy. So first of all, before, we have what we call in and out of sample testing. Some of you may be exposed in data science projects, so you really know what I'm talking about. For the rest of you, I will explain what this is in a nutshell. We all know and understand that in order to estimate a new AI model and how it works, you need to train. You need to train the model with some existing past data. For instance, we have a predictive pricing model. In order to generate optimum prices, we need to train it with past pricing data. Let's say that we have 100 pricing data from different countries or anything else. Now, instead of using all of this data to train our model, we just use 8 out of the 100. And we hold out the rest, that's the holdout sample or the out of sample, the sample that we let out. Why? For testing purposes. So we use the first 80 records to train our model. Based on that, we use our model in order to make projections and predictions for the remaining 20 price points. And we see in this out of sample, we test the accuracy of the model. If it was great and the predictive values were very close in the actual values, in the out of sample, then the model has a great predictive power. If not, then we need to rethink our model and possibly change it and see how it goes. Now, this is great for testing, but again, it's something that we do internally within the company without discussing or interacting with the customers. If we want to interact with the customers, even before we go live with our and launch our pricing policy, then we need to perform a price experiment. There are a number of ways to do that. One of the usual ways is A/B testing. So you select a small but representative sample of your customers. You create 2 groups. In the first group, you apply your existing pricing policy. In the next group, you apply your new pricing policy. If the outcome with the new pricing policy is much, much better than the previous one, you have a winner, you continue and launch. If not, you have to rethink the whole thing. But even after you launch, you can do certain things to test your strategy. First of all, instead of launching, let's say, globally, you can pilot in some countries or in some products. So instead of launching in 50 countries, which is your target audience, you just pilot in a couple of countries and everything looks great, then you proceed. The same with products. Instead of launching a discount, let's say, policy in 100 products for 100 products, you just pilot it in 2, 3, 5 products and everything looks great, then you proceed. And of course, after you have officially launched everything, of course, you can monitor your performance. I mean, this is the least that we can do in order to understand that everything looks great. So having said all that, let's do between us a small poll, a quick poll. As we are discussing, you will be presented now with the new poll, so you can start answering. And the poll is about the methods that you can use in order to test your pricing. If you haven't deployed any pricing strategy, obviously you can choose the first option. If you have, but you haven't tested anything, then you can choose the second option. But if you have tested something, then you can choose one or more of the other options that I just described before, be it performance monitoring, pilot, price experiments. I see that the part of the results, we will end it in a few seconds, and we'll share everything. But I will say they are quite interesting. Let's leave it, I don't know, Nihit, let's leave it for 10 more seconds, and then let's release the results for everyone to see. They're very interesting, I would say. Quite interesting. Nihit, I would say let's release it.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's share the results so you can see what's happening here. It's better than I expected. So only a few people have never done a pricing strategy. Okay, we expected that because we have mostly pricing people. Some didn't test. Again, we expected that. We know that most people don't test at all. They just launch, and we all pray that everything will go well. It's not a surprise that out of sample is less than in sample, although it's not very easy, but it is easy. You can do it. It's very straightforward, but it needs some specialized software, or at least to hire some people who know that. And what I would say is the surprising thing is that lots of people had done pricing experiments and pilots. Usually this is not the case, so we are happily surprised that we see that in your case, you were good pricing executives or directors, and you did your homework quite well. So we now see in the following slides some examples for price experiments in and out of sampling and pilots, and see how it works in practice, and it works great. So let's move on with a couple of examples. First of all, with in and out of sample testing. Now, this is an actual example of cross-country sale and trade. So in other words, we are selling to multiple countries. In this case, it's a specific product sold in more than 100 markets. And we're trying, first of all, to forecast our market share per country based on our trade. So as you can see here, by using the percentage error, you can see here an example of great performance, because the error is a single-digit error, just 5 to 6%. The in and out of sample errors are very close. And as you can see, the model is very robust, because regardless of the holdout sample, we have almost the same performance. That's an example of a great performance. There are many different metrics that we can use to test. This is an example, the absolute error, the percentage absolute error, a business example that all business people use and understand. There are also more technical examples of error metrics like R-squared. There are many more, mostly for data scientists and more specialized people to use. Now, this is not what happened, but this is an example of what a bad performance would look like. So you would have a big percentage error, usually more than 20%, it's strong double-digit error. And also the out-of-sample error would be bigger than the in-sample error, and also diverting for larger holdout samples. Well, for those of you who are involved in data science project, you know that this implies something which is the terror of data science and AI projects, which is called overfitting. I'm not going to elaborate more on that, but if you are interested, just ask something on the Q&A, and during the Q&A session, I will be happy to elaborate on that. But this is definitely something that we want to avoid. And this is, again, the same example with cross-country trade. And this is a case of a classification forecast. So in this case, we're trying to understand where are good market opportunities, countries where we didn't trade at all last year, but based on the model, we think there is a great potential for us doing something there. And as you can see here, there is a great precision. So 3 out of 4 times the model predicted correct the countries where we didn't trade at all, and we had the potential to do something next year. The recall is okay, but not great. It's good because we were able to identify almost half, slightly less than half of overall opportunities. So this model is great if you don't want to exhaustively identify all opportunities, but it's just good if you want to, if you are okay with identifying almost half of the opportunities. Something that I forgot to say, and it's important for this case, is that although it's a forecasting exercise, practically it's a pricing exercise because we take into consideration our pricing, our competitors' pricing, and of course, some market and macro indicators. Now, moving ahead, we have also pricing experiments, where this is the part where we actually start to communicate and interact with the customer, but again, we haven't still launched. So this is an actual case, an actual customer case with mobile applications and across-country optimization. So let's see what happened here. First of all, what was the challenge here? The challenge here is that the customer had several mobile applications with different prices, and each mobile application had the same fixed price in US dollars, converted each day based on the local currency exchange rates per country. So that means that there was a fixed price policy influenced only by exchange rates. Obviously, that was wrong because there are different spending capacities per country, different mobile penetrations, different market and macro conditions per country. So the customer asked us to differentiate the prices and optimize across countries in order to increase the revenue and also their conversion rates. On top of that, they wanted also to understand what were the key growth drivers behind their sales. So what we did is the following. First of all, we train our model. Our predictive AI model is the same that we used before, by the way, with data from 10 countries, data, product data, sales data, pricing data that we took from the customer, plus country and mobile market data, macroeconomics, demographics, things like that. Based on our predictive model, the trading that we did, we were able to extrapolate for an additional 10 countries, more than 10 countries. So overall, we gave some predictive insights for pricing, for over 20 countries. Then we the customer practically performed a price experiment. We coordinate that together with the customer. It was in 3 countries, not the 10 countries that we used for training the model, because we wanted to make it as difficult as possible. It was extremely difficult and challenging. There were 3 months of sales in 2 groups. It was an A/B testing. One group was presented with the previous fixed price policy, and the second with our new AI-generated pricing. And the result was a highly diversified pricing. So the model went as low as 20% of the initial fixed price and as high as more than 2 times the initial suggested price. So that was a risky, let's say, suggestion because it was highly diversified. It wasn't the usual fine-tuning of minus plus a small percentage change of prices. However, it played off very nicely for the customer because in the end, they increased the conversion rates 3 times and they almost doubled the revenues. On top of that, we were able to identify the top key growth drivers. Apart from pricing was the best one, the most important one, but also, not surprisingly, also exchange rates and the percentage of iOS versus Android users played an important role in determining the sales performance. So overall, a great successful price experiment where the customer boosted sales performance x-fold. And also on top of that, they now understand the price and sales dynamics of their market. And now I'm handing over to Nishit.
Thank you, George. Now I'll cover the 2 other testing methods that we can do as part of the implementation. Number 1, pilot, and number 2, performance monitoring during the implementation. The key difference between pilot and performance monitoring is that in pilot, we launch the pricing strategy with specific section of the customer base, whereas in the performance monitoring, we'll launch it across the board and measure the results, right? In an ideal situation, we would prefer to do the pilot first and then followed by full-fledged implementation, right? It involves 4 key steps. Step 1, stakeholder alignment. Step 2, sampling strategy. Step 3, rollout preparation. Step for result evaluation. In the first step, we align with key stakeholders from all the relevant departments on the pricing strategy. And as an output of this step, we ask for a green light to go ahead with the pilot or the implementation. This is a super important step. And in the second step, we develop the sampling strategy. So in order to do so, we first explore and define the key segmentation dimensions, for example, market, product, or customer size, etc. And then we decide which segments we need to select to test the pricing strategy, right? And there's always a dilemma of choosing the big segment versus small segment, because like if we go ahead with small segment, it's less risky. It might have lesser impact if the pilot fails. However, the downside is that if the pilot is successful in small segment, then the question arises, like, can we actually extrapolate it for the big segment, right? So then vice versa, like for a big segment, it's riskier if the pilot fails. However, if it's successful with the bigger segments, then like it's easier to get a green light to go ahead with the full-fledged implementation. Also, depending on the transparency, the pricing transparency, like in opaque pricing scenario, like in the B2B sectors, we can always do the pilot within a sub-segments, with sub-segments within a big segment, right? And so as a output from this step, we would ideally define the outcome criteria. So like whether the criteria which will decide whether the pilot was successful or not, and then get a full or partial buy-in from the stakeholders. You know, if we qualify the threshold criteria, then like we should be able to go ahead with the full-fledged launch of the pricing strategy. And then in the third step, we prepare for the rollout. It involves a couple of important elements. Number one, we should prepare the data capture template or system. It could be a simple Excel, or it could be more fancy, sophisticated tool where like the sales reps would capture the data, and then we would align with the sales team, the sales reps on what's the pricing strategy, what's the logic behind it, and also like how to capture the data, obviously. And also like we need to train them on key things like how to respond to potential pushbacks from customers, for example, right? So as an output from this step, we would roll out the pilot or the implementation. And then in the final step, we'll evaluate the results. So in order to do so, we'll define key metrics like ARR, sales, profit, etc. And also we would might choose some tools like BI tools like Tableau or Power BI which will help publish the results to all the team members and easily communicate the result, right? So as an output from this step, we will adjust the pricing strategy if needed based on the pilot results, and then we will then roll out the whole pricing strategy. Now I'll illustrate these two the price testing techniques using a real life case study. So the client was a HR tech company which had a SaaS platform which allows employers, businesses to post jobs, to brand their company, to connect with potential recruits, send tons of features like sending bulk messages, etc. And conventionally, they price it based on number of applications. So they use a metric price per job application. And they had several optional modules. However, the grouping of the features were a bit cluttered, not very unclear. There wasn't a clear upselling path. And the team wanted to explore how to unlock more values and increase their ARR via pricing and packaging. In the initial stage, we developed 4 hypotheses, which are very important. Hypothesis number 1, the attach rates of the optional modules could be increased if we repackage the modules, if we rebundle the features. Hypothesis 2, the customers would be willing to accept higher prices for both the main primary platform access as well as for the optional modules. Hypothesis 3, the customers would be willing to pay for some of the premium seats, which were offered for free at the time. By seat, I mean the role types or user types. And number 4, there's a potential to personalize the prices based on the characteristics of the customers, like customer size, their recruitment goals, also based on their usage in last 12 years, for example. In order to test this hypothesis, we first took a first step in which we designed a choice experiment using a methodology called conjoint analysis to test the first 3 hypotheses on like repackaging the optional modules, number 2 to stress test willingness to pay, and number 3 to see if the customers would be willing to pay for the premium seats which were free at the time. And all these 3 hypotheses were tested to be positive based on the choice experiments. And in the second step, we modeled the historical data to see if we could personalize the price. So like we took the data from 2021, the usage data from 2021, the customer characteristics, and their recruitment goals in terms of number of hires, annual hires, and see like if it could predict the price in 2022. The historical data from 2021 could predict the price of 2022. And we even had usage data for the new businesses because like most of the new businesses would come from the free platform access. So like we had some usage data for them as well. And based on this modeling exercise, again, like the 4th hypothesis also came out to be true. So in the step 3, we incorporated the results from step 1 and step 2 and develop a price calculator. And we were now ready to test it, right? In order to test, like we followed 3 steps. In first step, we did the segmentation across 2 dimensions. In one dimension, we have the size of the customers, small, medium enterprises, mid-market, and enterprise segments. And then in the other dimension, we had new businesses and renewals. So overall, we had 6 segments. And we developed a very practical data capture template on Excel. We didn't use any fancy tool in which we had like the deal ID, the price drivers, like the inputs that we use to calculate the price, the modules that they selected, the customer selected, the seats that the customers wanted to buy, and what was the calculator price, what was the quoted price, was the deal won or lost, any feedback from the customer, any comment from the sales, etc. So it's a very practical template. And in the step 3, we aligned with the sales heads. First, the 6 sales heads were appointed for 6 segments separately. Then we aligned with them on 4 elements. Number 1, the pricing strategy, why, how, what, etc. And then the pilot process, how we're going to roll out, how we're going to test, etc. Number 4, the data capture template, like that their sales reps needs to fill in as they go on with real deals. And finally, like a training session on how to respond, what are the potential pushback and how to respond to them. And the deals and the pilot was conducted for 6 months because it was a B2B business with approximately 500 premium customers. So it took a lot of time to have sufficient number of deals to evaluate the results. And based on the 6 months of pilot, firstly we looked into the win rate, and the win rate didn't change much across all the 6 segments. However, the average deal size increased by more than 40% for both renewals as well as new businesses. And the main drivers, there were 2 drivers. Number 1, the ARR from the new premium seats, which were free before, right? So 15% of the new the total ARR were coming from the premium seats. And the driver number 2, the attach rates of the optional modules increased significantly, right? And that was a very positive outcome, a dramatic increase in ARR. Despite the result, there were a lot of significant discounting going on, especially in SMB segments for both new businesses and renewals. And we deep dived into the key reason behind that, and we discovered that the sales reps were giving discount to customers who were hiring low salaried talents. For example, technicians, teachers for primary school, etc. So, and this was not factored in the model. So we rated all the types of hires into recruits into low salaried, medium salaried, and high salaried, and then incorporated in the model so that the model rectifies and takes into account of and this factor, so that there is no abnormal discounting in the future. And then finally, the final model, the calculator was rolled out. So what are the key takeaways from this session? Number 1, AI is a very important pricing lever. We should leverage that in order to have a dramatic impact on our business. Number 2, in order to have a successful rollout of AI powered pricing, diligent testing is necessary to mitigate risk, to increase the chances of success. And number 3, there are multiple testing techniques that we can use before or after or during the implementation based on the business context. So we'll now take questions from you.
I was trying to unmute myself. So for everyone, you can use the Q&A button in order to enter any questions. I can see some already there, but you have more, please feel free to do so. So because I wasn't presenting, I had the time to see the first questions and know what people are asking. Nothing about overfitting, by the way. Nobody has asked that so far. Let's see if someone will be interested. So one question, and it's for you, Nihit, because it's about the pilots, and someone asks how to select the right pilot sample.
So sampling technique actually depends on the business context and the risk appetite of the team. So like as I mentioned, like there's always a dilemma of selecting the big segment versus small segments, so like in order to balance between risk and the ability, the capacity to extrapolate the pilot results, right? So it definitely depends on the business context, how we segment it and what size we choose. There's another question on the Q&A, how long it takes to perform this study. So I'm not sure which study, the first one or the second one. The second one, it took 3 to 4 months to develop the pricing strategy, and then 6 months of pilot, and then another around 6 weeks to adjust the model and then re-implement it. George will answer. How long did it take for the first study?
Well, the price experiment was 3 months in order to get something which was robust, and we can really tell that there were differences between the two groups. But the actual duration, that was one case. The actual duration obviously depends on many different things. Usually it's more than a month, and it can be a year. Let's say, obviously it's just a few months because you need to launch eventually sometime in the near future. So usually it's a few months. So let's see, we have more questions. One question, and I will take this one. It's what's the benchmark for the business impact of AI pricing? So allow me to answer this one, Nihit. It depends, as all things in life depend. Using the example that I presented, it was AI-based pricing, and the outcome was expo, increase in revenues, in conversion rates, and everything, more than 2 times, or something like that. It's not always like that, obviously, especially if you are talking about a more established or a very big business. If you are making billions out of your product, it's very rare where you can just easily, by changing your price, double your revenue. It won't happen. In this case, especially if you have a big business, even a small single-digit percentage increase in your revenue, or even better in your pricing, decreasing your price erosion and increasing your pricing, therefore your bottom line, this could translate into millions or even hundreds of millions in revenue or even profitability increase. So unfortunately, I cannot give a specific benchmark because the range is from a few percentage points, especially for more established and more mature markets or companies or products. And if we're talking about something smaller or less mature, new products, evolving markets, then you could easily go to as far as increasing 2-3 times your revenue performance or whatever else you want to improve.
Another question for Monsieur Philippe Goudier. How many products could you test in the same time? George, you want to take that?
Okay. It depends on many things, but especially on one thing. If you have a completely different pricing strategy for these products that happen to happen at the same time, then you can test a lot. You need to do it separately. But if there is something which is common in this pricing strategy, for instance, you have a new discount policy, let's discount all our prices by 10% or something like that, then in this case, obviously, you can test more products all at once. But again, the number of products, even if you can test more than one product all at once, the number of products that you should test or which products you should test depends on how representative these are. And also, you want to test as fewer as possible, being also representative, because it's a sample. Let's not forget that. Regardless if you are doing a price experiment or a pilot, you are still sampling there. So you need a small sample, which is representative. So it's how few products you could, the fewer products you could test and have the same outcome, that would be great. Okay, so let's see. One question about the out of sample testing. Why do we use that? I understand that I explained that, but I explained it very briefly. So why do we use out of sample testing? Because otherwise we would be cheating. So if you're using, let's say, a training sample, you have some past data, you're using them all in order to train your model. And then in order to test your model's accuracy, you predict what? The same training sample, and then you test against it, but the information is already there. your AI model knows about this past data. So this is partly or fully already absorbed. So in a sense, you're not guessing, you're not forecasting, you're cheating. But if you hold out something, then this is actual forecasting. You hold out this information, let's say 20% of the sample. So you don't know that when you train the model. So it's like forecasting in real life, where you do something with your past data and the new data will come. You don't know them. And obviously you haven't used them for the training of your model. So if your predictions or price optimization exercises are correct, then most likely your model is highly accurate. The same with in and out of sample testing. There is another thing, but again, since nobody asked, I won't say that. I just mentioned that it's for overfitting. Overfitting, when it happens, this is exactly what we see. We see a model that performs great in the in sample, in the training sample, but then we would try to forecast something that the model didn't know. So out of sample testing, in this case, it really doesn't perform at all. It's awful. And this is a sign that we have what we say overfitting. So let's see. Nihit, something about performance monitoring. There is a question about the tools to use in order to test, to monitor performance after you launch. I think that's for you.
So for performance monitoring, like we could use like simply the Excel as well, like to monitor the progress, to evaluate the results. However, we could also use more efficient and sophisticated BI tools such as Tableau or Power BI, so that the stakeholders can see the results in real time, right? So that would be my answer.
Okay. One more question. When to use testing, before or after the launch? You want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So the ideally, like we want to be diligent, as diligent as possible. So like we should first do the testing during the strategy development phase before the implementation, in order to reduce risk and the cost associated with like the failure of the pilots or any experiments or implementation, right? So we should start with the pre-implementation testing and then go ahead with the pilots or implementation once the risk of failure is highly reduced. But in some context, there's pilot is not always possible. It could be technologically challenging, or the setup could be super costly, right? So it depends.
So let me add something on that, Nishit, and continuing practically your last remark. It's not only what you should do, it's what you can do. And it depends on many things. For instance, let's say you have a software as a service product and your pricing is public. Everybody can see that. So it's not easy to perform a price experiment in this case, because you either go public and you disclose your new pricing or not. So it's difficult in this case. But in other cases, let's say B2B sales, where you have a list price, but most of the things happen below the line where you give some heavy discounts. Obviously, there is room, there is flexibility. You can do many things in your one-to-one, face-to-face or calls, discussions with your customers. So in this case, you can test the waters before you officially launch. Practically, you don't even have to officially launch, because you might not even be changing your list price. You might be changing your discount policy, which is hidden anyway from your customers. So it depends when and how we can use any of these tools. My suggestion would be to use whatever is always simple to use in and out of sample testing. It's just a data science thing, just your software can do that. The specialized software can do that, or specialized people can do that. you can do that internally. You should, because this way you know that at least the model is accurate. Performance monitoring, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, we all should do that, and I think everybody's doing that. Price experiments and pilots, this is the tricky thing, and this is where we really need to think it over. If it's worth our commitment and effort, if we can do it at all. If we can, they are great tools. They are really make us feel very, very comfortable that this is going to work, and also give us an indication of the accuracy of the model, plus the impact, the actual business impact that this may have to our business. So that's really great when it can happen, of course. Okay, I think we answered all questions. If there is anything else, just ask it now in the following 10 seconds or so, because we are going to wrap it up. I don't see anything, so Nihit, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you everyone for joining our webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot an email to any one of us. Our email IDs are indicated over there. And if you like to work with us, you can scan the QR code or use the link on it. We'll share the link with the webinar recording as well. So please fill that form and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Thanks everyone for attending, and we wish you all happy AI-enabled pricing. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.